How's it going, everybody? So in this video, I wanted to discuss the importance of neurotransmitter balance, and specifically why it's so important to look into methods of optimizing your neurotransmitters to obtain the state of being that you desire. So, when we talk about neurotransmitter balance, okay, what we're really talking about is influencing neurotransmitters in an effective fashion to help make the behaviors and the thoughts and the intentions you have in life easier. So I'm a huge believer that the thoughts you tell yourself play a major role in creating your reality. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because you think, you believe something or you tell yourself something that's going to come true. But I do believe it's extremely powerful. However, I can tell you, even if you will yourself through the day or you force certain thoughts into your consciousness in order to achieve a certain result, it can feel like an uphill struggle, like an uphill battle, without attempting to optimize your neurotransmitters. And hormone balance plays a role in this too. Typically, if you have healthy hormones, specifically things like testosterone to cortisol ratio, as well as keeping prolactin down, you're going to have more dopamine, for example, which keeps you feeling motivated and satisfied with enjoying the journey and achieving your goals. So really what we're looking for is to consume herbs and to engage in exercise and to modify our nutrition in a way that creates a neurochemical environment that is in alignment with what it is we want to achieve. Okay. So a lot of people, so for example, so for me personally, I have had a long history with serotonin boosting herbs, things that work on the serotonin receptor, and they sometimes serotonin agonists, things like 5-HTP, which is a building block to serotonin, St. John's wort, which tends to upregulate the sensitivity of serotonin receptors over time, and even things like rhodiola rosea, where certain extracts tend to be more serotoninogenic, and then even things like ashwagandha, which tend to upregulate specific serotonin receptors over time. For me personally, serotonin boosting substances tend to just make me feel numb and anhedonic over time, to where I don't really feel pleasure from certain things. Whereas other people, it's like life-changing and it has like a totally like beneficial effect for them. Again, this is where trial and error needs to take place, and this is oftentimes why people will try something and just give up on herbs and supplements altogether. Compare that to my experiences with dopamine boosting substances. So I've tried mucuna, and certain extracts are good, some just really suck. And I've had great experiences with mucuna, but you tend to build a tolerance after like 3 weeks or so. Tyrosine, another amazing one. Mucuna and tyrosine basically give your body the building blocks to create neurotransmitters, which, by the way, you also get from food. Whole animal protein contains the amino acid precursors to things like dopamine, serotonin, and even glutathione, which is your body's master endogenous antioxidant, as well as the vitamin and mineral cofactors required to combine with those amino acids to create the neurotransmitters desired. So a lot of neurochemical balance relies upon your diet first, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a bit. But a lot of people, studies actually show the majority of Americans only consume the minimum protein required to survive, but they don't consume an ideal amount required to sustain stress hormones and neurotransmitter balance, let alone muscle tissue growth which will obviously help keep body fat down. But it's very important to give your body the building blocks to neurotransmitters first. A lot of people who suffer from a lack of motivation or depression or low energy, and they benefit from things like tyrosine, typically, if they just ate adequate protein, 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight per day, not total body weight, because you're 400 pounds, that's an excessive amount, we'll probably find that they don't really need supplements. Anyway, so nutrition is paramount, and different food sensitivities and food intolerances, which you can find through trial and error and keeping a food diary, also influence your stress response and how you feel, which is why there's a lot of people that go on extreme diets, so to speak, ketogenic diets, carnivore diets, and even some on raw vegan diets, where they change the chemistry of the composition of amino acids and things in their diet. For example, in a ketogenic diet, it actually, with the deprivation of carbohydrates and the presence of more ketones, actually seems to upregulate GABA, which is your body's main neurotransmitter involved in relaxation and calming the nerves, which is a direct antagonist to glutamate, which tends to be neurotoxic at higher levels, excitotoxic, exciting the neurons to death, which sounds like could be a badass song name. Exciting the neurons to death. All right, so yeah. So anyway, things like tyrosine and mucuna act as building blocks to dopamine, and when you take it in an isolated supplement form on an empty stomach, it tends to have very beneficial and strong effects on boosting motivation and mood. Now, there's other things that work on dopamine. Recently, I started taking Shilajit because everyone keeps telling me to try it in my comments, and I've been getting DMs on Instagram about it. And I find that it seems to doesn't have very strong dopamine boosting effects, but I'm only like 2 or 3 days in, and I do kind of feel a calming and grounding feeling, and I do feel more of a tendency towards motivation. But other things like gynostemma tea, or gynostemma, basically is like a more powerful and cheaper, affordable version of ginseng, has worked wonders. There's other herbs like reishi mushroom that has a very powerful and profound, it has a long track record of helping to guide people's life over time, and helping them make certain decisions that have been necessary for a long time, but they kind of kept it in the dark. Ignoring problems for a long time, reishi makes it kind of like removes the resistance to change. So anyway, what I'm kind of getting at here, though, is like herbs and supplements and even pharmaceutical medications, they're not necessarily cure-alls, but they can really help you make the changes necessary to change your life. And it's very important. When I was younger, I was on all sorts of antipsychotic drugs and things. Long story, but for like a decade I was. And when I got off them, I had horrible withdrawals, and eventually realized I never needed them in the first place, and I was better off without them. And those medications tended to cause the very symptoms they were trying to treat. However, and they made me feel like a complete zombie and unproductive. And at first I felt really wronged, and I was like, oh, medications are just horrible, right? And doctors are evil. But eventually I realized, well, actually, most doctors just want to help. And medications, if used properly, they're meant to kind of boost someone's neurotransmitters in a way that makes it easier to make life changes than it would be without the medications. And then once you make the life changes necessary, you can kind of like taper off the medications, and the life changes you made should help to sustain the beneficial mental health, if that makes sense. But these days I recognize there's so many compounds that are so even more powerful than medications without the nasty side effects that don't have negative side effects, but instead have positive side benefits, right? Again, like reishi mushroom, gynostemma, even Shilajit. They have a whole host of health benefits while also improving neurochemical balance. So anyway, there's different nutritional things you can do, like the meat and fruit diet and whatnot, and just avoiding refined foods also, because that will kind of program your dopamine and your reward centers in a way that makes you chase instant gratification, which is not compatible with being successful in life. And that's a huge problem in modern life, is that we have like an overconsumption of instantly gratifying foods and hyper stimulating stimuli, things like pornography, junk food, and social media scrolling all the time. It like controls the mind, really. It's horrible. It keeps people in captivity, and they don't even realize it. They think it's harmless. They're completely unaware. And taking reishi mushroom will help you become aware of that so that you can stop with that negative behavior. But anyway, and I think reishi actually works on endocannabinoid receptors in the endocannabinoid system, which is pretty interesting, actually. And if you take enough of a high-quality extract, you will feel very high. And it's not meant to be a drug, but nonetheless, it's meant to be a daily tonic that kind of like works on your life and your consciousness and your health over time and builds health versus like remedying a problem. That's a huge paradigm shift. So anyway, the point here though is, again, mindset's very important. Changing your life is very important. Talk therapy is very important, like if you're suffering from a serious life issue. And even if you're not, I think having a therapist, if you can afford it, is very beneficial. Or just, reading self-help books if, you need it, a paradigm shift. Things like Tony Robbins, Tony Robbins, Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And some people like Robert Greene, but I think that's a little too controlling of the external world. I think it's better for people to control their inner world to create change. Anyway, those things are good to modify your mindset and your behavior patterns, but I think it's also beneficial to have a nutritional paradigm, an exercise paradigm that works for you, and a supplemental strategy, specifically high-quality tonic herbs. Like Hoshi Wu is good for a lot of people. Even things like maca and black maca can help a lot. And cordyceps, but that's less of a mental change. But it does have dopamine-boosting kind of effects. But using herbs and supplements can help make it easier to make changes, okay? So if you're working like raw with no like herbal supplements and even things like fish oil, like a lot of people have deficiencies of essential vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, or they're supplementing with the wrong forms and they have deficiencies. And it's not so much that herbs and supplements are going to like work as drugs to help them, but a lot of times it's going to give them the things that they're lacking for so-called normal, healthy human functioning. And these days it's normal to be sick. Most people don't know what it's like to eat liver, red meat by the pound, and fruit on a regular basis. And they assume that that's all nonsense. So they never tried it. They don't understand like there's vital nutrients that Western science and reductionism hasn't really even identified yet. It's probably in these foods that's helping people that used to be kind of like a normal staple in our human evolution. Things like intermittent fasting can boost neuroepinephrine, and cold showers can actually stimulate dopamine for over 3 hours in a healthy way that has no crash. Vigorous cardiovascular exercise can also change your state, okay? So changing your state, changing your neurotransmitters, your neurochemistry, in order to make it easier for you to do self-improvement work is vitally important. I guarantee you go through a day of work with adequate sleep, where your nutrition has been on check for a month. It takes time for the body to take the nutrients you give it and put the processes where they need to be. Make these mechanical shifts on a deep visceral level over time. But you go through work when your neurotransmitters are shit from poor sleep, from stress, from poor thinking patterns, because thought patterns change using affirmations can boost dopamine and motivation as well. Doing something hungover, no sleep, whatever, it's going to feel like shit. It's going to be very hard compared to like drinking your caffeine, taking your herbs, good sleep, fish oil, proper nutrition. It's going to be a night and day difference, but people don't see it that way for some reason. People are just like, oh, it's another day. I feel shitty because of coincidence, right? I'm shitty because it's shitty. Rather than I feel shitty, well, there's all these reasons as to why, and I have the power to influence that, right? It's all mindset and grit. It's like, no, actually, I mean, sure, mindset and grit is cool, but if you have nutritional deficiencies or your hormones are shit or you didn't sleep well last night, yeah, it's going to feel like absolute, like it's like things could be so much easier if you just nourish your body. Don't even get me started on this self-love nonsense people go into when they're not even eating proper, self-love, eating a bunch of donuts and accepting myself for being fat. Like, no, self-love is giving your body the things it needs and thinking thoughts, the right thoughts that literally like nourish it on a deep visceral level and make life better for yourself, right? There's no love, you should love is not like allowing yourself or other people to engage in behaviors that are counterproductive to health, success, and happiness. You don't need to like try to love something if the thing you're trying to love is in alignment with love, which just basically means if you are, living, if you have all of your health and your nutrition and your neurotransmitters and you're doing the nutrition, all this stuff, which is not that hard because it's the rewards make it like easy. Every morning I just do the same shit and it's like 9-day difference. That is very easy to love. It's very easy to enjoy life and love life when I'm listening to music that makes me feel good and empowered. I'm eating foods that make me feel good, energized, and empowered. I'm thinking thoughts that make me feel good, energized, and empowered. I don't even think about, oh shit, I got, self-love and acceptance, and then engaging in like arguments online with people about, what should be body acceptance or not. It's like, well, I don't give a shit because I don't have to try to accept my body because I already do. Because you know what I mean? Versus like you just naturally don't accept your body and whatever. This whatever. Anyway, hope that this has helped people. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Leave questions and comments and video requests in the comments.